Once upon a time in a little village, there lived a young girl named Meso. She was a bright and cheerful child with round, clear eyes. Meso's parents passed away when she was just a little girl, leaving her in the care of her mom's only sister, Aunt Chinyere. Aunt Chinyere was a stern woman with a sharp tongue and a quick temper. But Meso had no choice but to move in with her and her family, as there were no one else to look after her. Chinyere had three children of her own, two boys and a girl, and they were all older than Meso. From the moment Meso arrived, she knew life would be different. Her cousins were not like the friends she had back in her old village. They were mean and bossy, always making her do their chores while they lounged around. Mmeso, fetch us some water, her cousin Obinna would command, while her other cousin Chidinma would sneer and say, and don't take all day about it. Mmeso would hurry off to do as she was told, feeling the weight of their expectations bearing down on her shoulders. She cooked, cleaned, and washed their clothes, all the while dreaming of the days when she could play freely in the fields like she used to. But perhaps the hardest part for Mmeso was when it came to schoolwork. Despite being the youngest, Mmeso was the smartest of them all. Her aunt and cousins would force her to do their homework for them, threatening her with punishment if she refused. Mmeso, if you don't do my math homework, I'll tell mommy for you, Chidinma would hiss, her eyes narrowed in malice. Mmeso had no choice but to comply, her heart heavy with the unfairness of it all. She longed to tell her uncle the truth about how she was treated, but her aunt and cousins made sure she knew the consequences if she ever spoke up. One day, Mmeso's uncle returned home after a long absence. His arrival brought a temporary reprieve from Mmeso's chores and mistreatment. Chinyere and her children would put on a show of kindness and hospitality, pretending as though everything was normal. "Daddy, I missed you so much," Chidinma would exclaim, wrapping her arms around her father's neck. But Mmeso knew better than to be fooled by their facade. She kept her head down and her mouth shut, afraid of what might happen if she dared to speak the truth. As the days turned into weeks and then months, Mmeso's situation only grew worse. Her aunt refused to let her go to school, claiming it was a waste of money that could be better spent on her own children. "You are lucky to have a roof over your head and food in your belly, Mmeso," her aunt would say, her voice cold and dismissive. "Don't ask for more than you deserve." Mmeso felt like a bird trapped in a cage, longing to spread her wings and fly away. But no matter how hard she tried, there seems to be no escape from her aunt's cruel grasp. And so, Mmeso's days were filled with endless toil and sorrow, her spirit slowly fading like a flame in the wind. But deep down, she hoped that one day she would be delivered from the hand of her tormentors. One day, on a school day, Mmeso was washing a heap of clothes after heavy beating by Chinyere for delaying breakfast. Her body was aching her and she had sustained some injuries from the beating. While Mmeso was still washing, her uncle Edison came in. When Chinyere heard her husband's voice outside, she ran out with shock and met him staring at Mmeso with anger. He turned to her and asked if Mmeso was involved in an accident, but Chinyere couldn't respond. In great anger, Uncle Edison instructed Mmeso to go inside and change her clothes, and without looking at his wife, he went back to his car to wait for Mmeso. When Mmeso came out, with a changed cloth. He drove straight to the hospital. The doctor expressed shock when he saw the extent of her injuries. He exclaimed and asked, what could have caused such injuries to a child like that? Uncle Edison was too ashamed to answer, so he just shook his head. After the treatment, he took Meso to a nearby restaurant and bought for her what she wanted to eat. And a tear dropped from his eye as he saw how she devoured the food, as if somebody would take it from her anytime soon. He felt so guilty for not paying enough attention as to notice what was going on under his roof. Without asking her anything, Uncle Edison knew that the orphan child who they were supposed to care for as their own has been going through what should not be spoken about. But he asked her nonetheless, just to know the full details of what was going on. After Mmeso narrated all that she had been going through in the hands of her aunt and the children, Uncle Edison was filled with pain and anger. He begged Mmeso to forgive him and his family for hurting her the way they did. Mmeso, in her mind, was wondering how her uncle offended her, as he was not part of those who hurt her, but she didn't say anything. Uncle Edison continued to apologize, and he also promised that she would never go through such again as long as he was alive. Mmeso was so happy and thought that at last she will have a normal life like her cousins and those children who lived in the compound. When they got home, Uncle Edison called his wife and children and told them how they had been wicked to a child that they were supposed to protect and take care of. And he expressed his disappointment at their behavior, as he thought he had been showing them good example of how to be good to people. When he was done rebuking them, he pleaded with them to change their attitude towards Meso so that they can live as a happy family. They all promised to do as he said, and in the presence of Uncle Edison, they all apologized to Meso, which came as a shock to her, but she was happy all the same. Uncle Edison stayed longer than usual, and everyone was happy. Aunt Chinyere divided the house chores amongst the children according to their age, and made sure everyone ate to their satisfaction. Uncle Edison enrolled her in school of his choice, and Mmeso could not have been happier than she was, and she almost forgot the ugly experience of the past. When Uncle Edison left to his base, he always called to speak with her and to ensure that everything was going as they promised. A week after his departure, he had an accident in his workplace, and Aunt Chinyere had to travel to take care of him. They stayed there for 2 weeks before he was stable enough to travel to their state of residence, so it would be easier for Aunt Chinyere to look after the home and the children. As this was going on, everything went back to what it used to be, and it even got worse than before. Mmeso prayed night and day for her uncle to recover before Aunt Chinyere and her children would kill her. It happened that one day they were beating her with a stick, and she ran outside for fear of her life. Later that night, she came back home, but her aunt told her to never come back to the house again, and for 3 days she was never allowed inside, and she had to leave the area when Aunt Chinyere came out one day to threaten to pour her hot water if she's seen around the vicinity again. Out of fear, Meso ran away. As she was wandering around the city, she became very tired as she had not eaten that day. The last food she ate was what a neighbor gave her secretly, because none of the neighbors could intervene on her matter, as they were scared of Aunt Chinyere because she was a police officer. and she usually threatened anybody who poked noses into her business. One day, as she was resting under a tree close to the market, after doing odd jobs to feed herself for that day, she saw an elderly woman struggling with two heavy bags as she walked towards the car park at the far end of the road. She ran to the woman and offered to help her carry one of the bags. The woman hesitated at first. You could see her struggling to make a decision. But on another note, she resorted to allow the young child help her. So Nmeso took one of the heavier bags and followed her to her car. When they got to where she was parked, the woman, Mrs. Iwu, had a thought and turned to ask the young girl, who looked so malnourished, of her parents. Nmeso was taken aback because since she came to that area, nobody has asked her that question. So when the elderly woman asked her, she didn't know what to say at first. But at the woman's insistence, she poured out her story with so much pain and anguish. Mrs. Iwu was moved to tears after hearing the pathetic story of such a young child. She asked if Meso would like to go home with her as it was getting late. Meso hesitated but made up her mind as she has nothing to lose anymore. On their way, Mrs. Iwu told Meso her name and told her not to be afraid as she will be well taken care of from there onwards. When Mrs. Iwu stopped in front of a great mansion, Meso wondered if she wanted to drop something off for someone, but when the gate was opened by an uniformed man, Mrs. Iwu drove in. Meso began to wonder who she really was.